Okay. All right. A little bit of challenge. There's always a challenge at the last second getting the show started. We're going to try to do something a little different today. We got a guest on who's going to bring in some extra material, so we had some issues with trying to share the screen. It doesn't look as great as I wanted it to, as far as the not the content of what's going to be shown. It's just how it lays out on the screen. But I'd rather try something and improve on it and do it better the next time than to not even to try it at all. All right, we are on. I remember one time forgot to hit the start button. We are on. We got some viewers. We don't have any comments yet. Nobody to name quite yet. Got our logo. Hope you enjoyed our music there. That was compliments of our musical director, Michael Harmon, providing that for us tonight. Our bump music. Hopefully we'll be able to load that in. Figured out some audio issues and able to load that in at the end of the show. Welcome. Today is, what day is today? I don't even know. Today would be the April Fool's Day, April 1st. This is our 16th episode of Co-Video Live TV. Thank you for joining us. Before I go anywhere, for the safety of my guest, I do need to do a quick temperature scan and see 98.4. We're in short sleeves today. That's why I'm running a little cool, so that works out well. All right, so without any further ado, I'd like to bring on our first guest. We've had heard a lot probably on the news recently about statistics, numbers, predictions, number of ventilators that will be needed, people that are going to acquire this on a state-by-state basis, flattening the curve, a lot of things about statistics that are based on models, so I thought it would be a good opportunity to bring in an expert in the situation. Without any further ado, let me just hit the guest in button and bring in the audio. That's my brother, Harry Smolen, the CEO of Medical Decision Modeling. I think you need to turn your computer screen up a little bit there. We're cutting the top of your head off. I thought we went through that in pre. All right. Harry Smolen, CEO of Medical Decision Modeling. Welcome to the show, Harry.
Great to talk with you, Ron. I'm not seeing you, but we could work through it.
Okay. Oh, sorry about that. I shut that off earlier. I'm not sure exactly what's going on. All right. Nonetheless, welcome to the show. Everybody does see you, looking good. As I mentioned in the pre-introduction, there's been a lot of talk recently about studies and statistics and modeling related to the number of ventilators needed, and et cetera. You were able to hear that. Am I pretty much accurate on what we wanted to talk about today?
Sure. Just wanted to draw kind of bring together what people are hearing and just some real life stuff that we do with our work, and just a little background on modeling and its relationship to COVID and any other disease that's infectious.
Yeah, this wasn't the crystal ball show where we were going to try and announce a very precise number of expected this, that, or the other based on states. But though people are throwing around some numbers out, they're acting as though they are. They're predictions, but they're not crystal ball predictions. When people are talking about these kind of numbers, they're basing it on modeling and inputs, right? And that's kind of what you do. Tell us a little bit about the things that you do with medical decision modeling.
Well, just starting off with, there's a famous saying by a statistician, Dr. B.O.X. Box, and his famous statement, and it starts most introductory stat books, that says all models are wrong, some are useful, and that's pretty relevant in this day and age, because they don't know enough to put those assumptions into the model. So what they say is, what if? And that's basically what models do. Is I learned way back in the early 90s, you do a model when it's too expensive, unethical, or impractical to build the real system and experiment on it. So, these software models are excellent in this situation, where they're flying by the seat of their pants. How long is somebody infectious? What's the probability of going from infectious to need hospitalization? Of those who need hospitalization, what percent will need a ventilator? Limited resources. So software models provide an excellent tool to bring together all this information in the absence of clear facts.
Mm-hmm. So you had a little bit of info to show us here. This is the tricky part of the screen of the broadcast. So I got to do a couple things here. You got to do a few there. You get your screen ready to show completely, and I think I can. Got that. This is live TV, folks. It should be a whole picture of you showing up. There you go. If I just do one more thing here, just like we practiced. And yeah, we should be good. All right, so
Great.
let me roll off the logo here to get that out of your way. All right, good work on stealing that logo from me. That's the.
I was just gonna say.
Yeah, that's that. No, we're not going to put our legal department on it. We don't have a legal department.
I don't see a TM or an R by it. So
that's
12-year-old.
That's an Eddie Wantuck original, another donor to the program. Thank you, Eddie Wantuck. Hold on, let me say hello to some people that have checked in on the chat. Hannah Smolen's here. Suzanne Smolen, Jessica Roberts is back. Martha Chaya Cookie, my mother-in-law, is there as well, and Lee Smolen as well. All right, let's roll. What have you got here?
Well, props to Henry Smolen, my 12-year-old son, on the little help with stealing the logo. But just 5 slides, as I said, to touch upon some of the tying together some of the things you hear on the news. But good logo. It was easily stealable. This modeling stuff has been going on for a long, long time. As you can see circled here, I based my master's thesis upon which I started the company back in 1994. So I've been doing this stuff since 1992. And it was kind of new back then to use computers. But as you can see, I leveraged modeling to get my master's in engineering from Purdue University way back when. I think that was 92. So Clinton was president. What I did for my master's thesis was Indiana University School of Medicine, where I coded my master's thesis. IU School of Medicine has a campus in Kenya, and they frequently had meningitis breakouts, and they wanted to know what could they do. And as I said in the introduction, you can't just say, hey, we're going to do nothing during this outbreak, and then next. I assume that's me or your son. You can't just say, hey, we're going to do nothing this year, and then next year we're going to give them some shots, and then the third year we're going to quarantine people. You'd have too many deaths. So that's the unethical. So you develop these software models, and not as in these meningitis outbreaks, you have some time, but these people are flying by the seat of their pants, not in a negative way. It's just the reality of the situation. This was kind of the summary of my master's thesis, is where we did a very intense simulation of Kenya and an outbreak of meningitis. And as you can see on the x-axis here, meningitis and hopefully COVID is a seasonal thing that, and I'm not claiming to know this, but I know in meningitis that you're more likely to get it during the dry seasons of Kenya or any other country, where your nose and mouth are much more drier and much more susceptible to the virus. And so as you could see, the line here is a do nothing strategy. And we simulated, and this is almost 30 years ago, 27 years ago, 3 different intervention strategies, and then looked at the cases under each of the strategies. So here's an example of something that I did 27, 30 years ago, but this is exactly the kind of things that people are looking at now in much more detail. But, as you can see, hopefully this COVID is going to have some seasonality to it. I think most experts are saying that it's not a one and done, but it will come back. But hopefully we'll have a treatment and or a vaccination for it. But this is what you could do. You could do these interventions and say, hit the go button and see how many people died based on the best assumptions you have.
So we heard a lot initially in flattening the curve. What does that come into play here, and what people can do?
That would be more the third slide, the third point or the third subject matter in this. But in here, what we did in this is vaccinate the really young, and that you could see that it really didn't do much. Intervention number 2 clearly had a dampening effect on the number of cases, and that was vaccinations of the 3 to 15-year-olds. And then the third one is, hey, if somebody in your family has meningitis, let's treat the immediate family members. And that did very little. A second, general point. I know a lot of people have been reading material about COVID and predictions, and there was a very interesting point that University of Cambridge out of the UK made. And any new hire to MDM, we say that after working on this stuff for decades, there becomes a little bit, you tend to joke about things. But it's not joking matter to the people who have fill in the blank. These are statistics, but in real life, these are real people with real families. And, you talk about them in the abstract, but who wants to volunteer to be that 1 out of 1,000 that passes away? So just a little preamble that I don't mean to trivialize anything here, but it was an interesting perspective that I was reading on the University of Cambridge site. And basically, you'll see in the upper left, in the top, mortality rates, percent chance of dying in each of the years. You have in male and female, and you'll see that you start at birth, and it goes down. And those mostly are congenital things that people didn't know they had, but will pass away at 5 because of a bad heart that they didn't necessarily know. And then it goes up. Sadly, you'll see with the males that it blips about 20 years old, and we all know, unfortunately, why that is. And then it goes up over time, approximately, I think it was like 0.9% per year. On the left, you have the log scale. On the right, you have the linear scale. It really shows that, if you're 90 years old, your percentage of passing away in any year is about 10%. And what they did is they superimposed COVID data on this and said, it's kind of a blunt statement, but what it's saying is that, hey, basically what we're doing here is taking a year's worth of mortality and packing it into a week or two. So you don't want to say that these people would have passed away without it, but what it's definitely doing here is that it's taking, people who would have died in that year. And one theory from a very respected source is that it's packing it into 1 or 2 weeks. Now, there's always cases of the 25-year-old who dies, who was a marathon runner the week before.
Right.
But what it's saying is that this may be more of not saving lives, but let's not overwhelm that system. If you're taking 52 weeks and you're putting it in 1 or 2, and for anybody who cares to read it, there is a source at the bottom, but it was a very sobering and different perspective on the disease and on the pandemic. And then the third point I have here is that, if you remember, a week is like a year in this pandemic. 2 weeks ago, when they said this could be up to 2.2 million deaths, and then you hear where people are saying about 100 to 240, I think, were the latest numbers.
Yeah, that's what we were hearing today. Yep, yesterday, today, thrown around. Yep.
And then the University of Washington has an Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation. Once again, the reference at the bottom. And what it shows, if you look at the screen a little bit closer, the top one is hospital resource use. And, a person like my wife who works with the Ascension Health System, it's all about capacity and, what is the capacity? When is it going to peak? And, do we need to set up, as New York is doing, hospitals and armories? Or I think at the U.S. tennis, Arthur Ashe Tennis Stadium, they're opening up a hospital.
I saw that, which raises other issues, about all sorts, about use of that. Again, Convention Center in New Orleans was supposed to be opened up as well, overwhelming the available beds at hospitals, normal hospitals.
And one of the things, lastly to point out on this is you see bans, and those are, I think that University of Washington is saying about 82,000. They're predicting total deaths, but it could go upwards of 240, and those are, 95% credible or confidence intervals, depending on your analysis, but they don't know for sure with certainty the assumptions that go into their models. But using generally accepted, the most possible scenarios, these are, this screen here is just representative, but I encourage people to go to it. And this is actually, you could select for individual states. So I think this is Indiana, and they're looking to peak about April 16th, or is that the 19th? But,
right. So a lot of the models for these individual states are based on, as you said, assumptions. And one of the big assumptions is, and can vary, and that they adjust for, is people's compliance with the stay-at-home orders to slow the spread of the disease, for the ultimate goal to dampen the overall impact of the peak of hospital, or what did you call it? The need for beds, right? On the NHS, I saw that earlier, the National Health System.
Yes.
That was from a Cambridge slide, though.
Yeah, that was Cambridge, which is UK, but what you're seeing here is US, and not only hospital beds, but different types. ICU, need for ICU beds available, how many are needed, and based on this, it looked like Ohio is doing well. Indiana looks like they're going to get some crunch, depending on it. But as you know, Ron, from your manufacturing experience, in the last 30 years, people have gone to very lean supply chains, and that's what we're seeing. Not making any judgment on it, but that's what we're seeing this stage. Is that you plan for the black swan and have a warehouse full of beds, masks, respirators that grow dusty over 30 years, or do you try to manufacture them when you need them? But just three things here. It just showed how this stuff has been around, and how I used it for my master's thesis. A interesting perspective on basically, and don't hold this against me, but a credible source saying this is just accelerating people that would have passed away anyways, but accelerating their death into a crunch period, which causes a lot of problems. Mm-hmm. And then thirdly, a source that is pretty user friendly to use, to look at specific states and kind of so you're not just getting it from CNN or Fox or MSNBC, but you actually play with the numbers. I don't think you could do what if analysis, but you could get a sense of where the sources of the data when you hear these scary numbers.
All right. Is that your last slide there? Can I go back on full screen?
It is my last slide.
All right, let me try to do this here. So if you give up the full screen, then we should be able to do this. Bring me back. Put that back on. All right. And then...
Am I back?
You should be any second now. Give me a second here. I'm going to turn my video back on. Run this up to full. Put you back in the corner. And... we're close. We're close. We're getting there. All right. So...
one of the paradoxes that my coworker Lee Smolen that we get is that you save somebody from cancer and they'll only to die of something else. So it's kind of a frustrating thing when you're doing working with a company and you're doing a specific treatment for stroke. Well, you keep them from having a stroke, but they may die from cancer, and it's a very sobering and realistic look when you're dealing in these kind of models and trying to look at, you don't save lives, at best you're extending them, and but it is an interesting science.
Gotcha. Yeah, honestly, I'm a little at a loss here and trying to get this straight. I'm just going to have to dial you down and say, oh, there you are. You're welcome back. Sorry about that. I don't know how that happened. Switch to A. There we are. And if I bring my guest back in, live TV, folks. All right. Wow, we did it successfully, back from the net ether. All right, we went a little bit over. I got to leave some time for our second guest who I have to dial up. Harry, appreciate you coming on to try and go into some of the details on what's behind. We had a question that came in from one of the viewers. What's comorbidity? What is a comorbidity?
Let's just say that you have... as you'll see in the news, that you get COVID and you actually have had 3 cancer occurrences in the last 7 years, that would be comorbid. Morbid meaning sickness, and it's co meaning it exists in conjunction with. So if you have very high blood pressure and you get COVID, you have a worse prognosis or pneumonia in the near past or cancer treatment. So it's basically things that coexist with a disease that usually make your outcome worse.
Got it. All right, with that, I'm going to roll you down here. Guest out. Thank you for joining us today,
Thank you,
Harry.
Ron.
Maybe we'll check back in with you.
Hey, my wife, she says I talk COVID all day. Invite her.
He just won't go away. All right, let me get ready for good now. See ya. All right, and with that, I'm going to roll up the logo here. Hopefully this works out all right, and we're going to bring our second guest in. Stand by. Okay, that was a little longer delay. If it was anybody else, I would have abandoned the attempts to get a hold of my friend Ted on Skype. So hopefully, without any further ado, we're going to bring in my friend Ted Calvin. Hello, Ted.
Hey,
All right, Ted is here. Thanks everybody for waiting. It should be worth it. Well, we have my brother on, Ted. I don't know if you're able to watch at the same time in the green room. We need to get a monitor in there for you. But he was talking about some of the statistical modeling and some of the inputs that are involved in the modeling of the spread of this disease, and some of the modeling and assumptions and statistics that are involved in having the proper amounts of equipment ready for worst case scenarios. You work in a hospital. You are a respiratory therapist. How are things been going for you? What have you been seeing lately? I mean, what's your take lately?
well, there's definitely been an increase in really severe, like respiratory issues. Um, I mean, we saw it coming. We knew it was gonna hit, and we've had time to try to gather extra equipment and rent vents and that sort of thing. So uh, the worst is potentially yet to come. So we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, those were part of the studies or statistics or predictions, whatever you want to call it, is in the estimated numbers of that kind of equipment that would be needed. I talked to a previous guest before, or others, and we're all seeing it in the news. Are you guys having any issues getting hold of the PPE, the masks, the gowns, the things that protect you and your coworkers?
Well, we're rationing them so that that doesn't happen. We're given, a single-use mask a day, and if used correctly, it should last. We'll usually put a surgical mask over it when we give nebs and stuff like that. Um, uh, I don't know, like if you end up going into a full inverse, whatever, where the vacuum is pulling, air from the outside through.
Right.
Can't think of the term right
Negative
now.
air?
But, negative pressure. Thank you. If you're in a negative pressure room, um, there's it probably can't be helped that you're going to go through some masks. So that's where we've got to, make sure that we have our surplus, for that sort of thing. And hopefully, if it comes down to the point that we get a flood and we get overwhelmed, maybe by that time we'll get some more masks.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the whole country by that time will get some masks. We'll see.
It sounded like those who do have gotten the COVID of all ages, that they hit a point where it incubates for an average of what, 5 to, well, the whole 2 week is based on the farthest out, the amount of time that people are exposed to the virus until they start to develop symptoms, right? With an average being around 5. I know you're not a doctor, but you have some knowledge of this too, right? But once people are getting the symptoms, showing the symptoms, it seems to be pretty quickly where they're under significant distress and might need to be put on ventilators. Is that kind of the timeline that you would be seeing or heard about?
So far, from what I understand, usually the minute they start showing respiratory distress, it's like a race against the clock to, give them some kind of support.
Mm-hmm.
We've got like sort of classifications. So if the patient can get by without being intubated, obviously that would be the preferred method, because intubation can be, especially the kind of ventilation required for ARDS, can be kind of hard on the lungs and the body. And so we want to avoid that, not just to preserve equipment.
Right.
And when people start to get to the point that they're struggling, usually, it's really rapid.
Mm-hmm.
Get them intubated and get them on the vent right away.
Yeah, a little of what I've taken on in how this overtakes a body and how people have ultimately succumbed to it is, well, we become the victim of our own immune system, where your body really fights hard and takes good tissues away with it. I mean, is that pretty accurate from what I understand?
Yeah, for the most part, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
I forget the term.
The cytokine storm?
Yeah, cytokine storm.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, your body basically freaks out and floods your lungs. And yeah, of course, there's a lot of damage already there from whatever the disease process is. And then, in this case, virus probably compounded by a bacteria. So,
right. So what's the general procedure if I were to show up there tomorrow? If I didn't pass my temperature test and I had to have my substitute filling in for me, and I'm watching on my iPad the co-video live TV, what kind of treatments would I be seeing? What's the progression for, let's say, a 51-year-old male if I showed up with symptoms of it? Or, I assume that you don't come into the picture until somebody's having some significant problems, or is the plan would the plan be in a hospital to hit them with, obviously respiratory therapy right off the bat?
well, the first thing is if you're not basically dying, we would probably have you go home because, there's kind of no point in you just being in the hospital and being sick. When there's going to be resources needed for people that are, requiring critical care.
Mm-hmm.
So, it depends on what state you're in. And I know people are being sent home that aren't in really bad shape. They're being told to go home and take care of yourself, and that's pretty much it. But if you are showing signs of needing some kind of support, then you'll be categorized, and hopefully you'll be able to get by with just supplemental oxygen and probably some prophylactic antibiotics to make sure you don't get a secondary infection.
Right. Well,
but if you keep deteriorating, then, well, get yourself a free tube.
Right. Well, we hope that we're not scaring anybody with a little bit of a peek behind the curtain as to what people would encounter, how this disease is virus is infecting people, and how it's affecting hospitals' ability to care for them. But in general, locally here in Northwest Indiana, we haven't really seen that many cases. I don't know. As of this morning, I believe there were less than 10 total fatalities, but if you believe the models, that is expected to go up rapidly in the next couple of weeks. Am I right from what you're hearing as well?
Yeah, that is the model. I mean, if we follow the pattern of any of the other countries, then yeah, we should see a pretty rapid rise. I don't know. We'll see what happens, man.
Yeah, we've got no real reference to go by. We keep that those words are uttered on this show frequently. We've never been here before, right?
Yeah, never been here before in so many ways.
Yeah. If you had some advice to people, it would be what to avoid getting it.
Well, stay home if you can.
Right.
They haven't officially put a nationwide order to wear a mask out, and I know if they did, everyone would be pissed off. But it might not be a bad idea if you have access to some kind of a mask to wear it if you have to go to the grocery store, and make sure you wash your hands and stuff afterwards. And from what I'm understanding, it can persist on various surfaces for a really long time. Usually you think of clothes as not being that big of an issue, but I heard one report say that after you go to the grocery store, put your clothes in the wash machine and take a nice soapy shower. And
especially if you would be in a particularly high risk group, I can't argue with that. At least do some significant hand washing, yeah, and be careful.
And even if you're not in a high risk group, the thing is if you have it with you and on you, at some point you're probably going to give it to somebody, and they might be in a high risk group. So that's what people need to kind of be aware of. It's not okay if you feel fine, good for you, but please, be mindful that not everybody, has 100% health behind them to fight this. And of course, even in those really odd situations, there are people that are healthy that are getting the severe form. So you just never know what's going to happen. And
yeah,
it's better to be safe.
Yeah, those are good points. A good point to end on. We're all in this together, and we all have to try and take care of each other. And it may not seem like much, trying to stay home, trying to stay out of public, not bringing your kids along with you to the stores, limiting your outside appearances in order to do your part to, as we say, that we coined the phrase a couple weeks ago, flatten the curve, right, Ted?
Yeah.
Right.
Flatten the curve so that we don't get the hospitals completely overrun at once. Try to spread it out, and keep it mellow.
Exactly. I like to try and keep the end the conversation on a little lighter note than the heavy COVID. You and I are in a band together, and we
Yeah.
should be working hard towards an upcoming event, but I believe that is essentially over. Then will not be happening at the end of this month. That was the Music for the Heart event, right?
I would imagine not.
No.
Yeah.
So yeah, I look forward to being back at your house, making some noise on the drums sometime soon here. Hopefully, maybe by May, maybe by my birthday. It'll be May 14th. Hopefully, we're through all this by then.
If unless I sell your drums and Matt's amp on eBay.
Is that restricted travel to come and save my drums? I think I could deal with the Porter County Police Department and justify that kind of what do you call that? Repossessing of my drums. All right, Ted. Appreciate you coming on the show tonight. We ran a little long. I'm glad you were able to work out the Skype and join us. Hopefully,
Yeah.
we can. Thanks for working with us early and getting that better microphone on. You sound really good. Sounding
Hey,
good.
thanks.
Looking good as always. And we will give you a ring back. I hope we can check back up with you.
Oh yeah, yeah, man. I'm honored to be on your show. Thanks, man.
Just like I told you to say, Ted. Thanks. Hey, be safe. You and your coworkers, you're doing great work there on the front lines. Take care of yourself. We need you. And everybody else, take care of each other. Ted, I'm going to cut you right here. I can get
All
my
right.
screen back on. Thanks for joining us, Teddy.
Thanks, man.
All right. And with that, despite all the bumps and jumps, hopefully we still have 2 or 3 viewers left. What are we at? We're at about 8:43. We've been running for about 40 minutes. I think this would make for our longest show yet. When you're rewatching, when you're binge watching your co-video live TV, perhaps you can just skim through some of the parts that you don't find as interesting. But I hope some of the information that was presented to you was valuable in our fight as a country against the against the COVID-19, not against co-video live TV. This is co-video live TV episode 16. Hopefully you'll be able to join us tomorrow at 8 p.m. Central Time for co-video live TV episode 17. We've got some interesting guests on, different perspective. We're going to be bringing in some teachers to talk a little bit about how schools are handling the e-learning and how that is getting rolled out in a variety of different ways locally here. So thank you for joining us tonight. Hope to see you all back here tomorrow.